You're listening to the Educated Cowgirl podcast, episode 15. Hey everyone, I hope you've had a great start to 2024 so far, and I am so excited to be coming back to you with what I hope will be a great second year of the podcast. I have many great guests lined up, and hopefully we can continue to grow the show together. I am very excited to bring you today's guest as she brought so many great insights into important topics and changes that need to be addressed in the equine industry. Also, her story in the horse show world and the new exciting things she has coming up are so fascinating. Today, you'll be hearing my conversation with Madison Nirenstein, or as you may have seen her on social media, Madison TN Equine. I have loved watching her videos and her thoughts and opinions on different parts of the industry, showing, and her horse journey. And I wanted to bring her on the podcast to discuss a lot of those topics that we both want to see changes in those areas and bring awareness to them. I love talking with her so much, and honestly, I felt like we connected so well together during this interview. I felt like I was talking to someone I'd known for years and not just a couple weeks. So without further delay, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Madison. Hey, and welcome to the Educated Cowgirl podcast, hosted by yours truly. My name is Abby Carpenter, and I am a cowgirl and equestrian through and through. I started this podcast wanting to make more of an impact in the equine industry. That's why I am making it my mission to help promote the industry to the public through sharing my love for horses through education and bringing other experts and professionals onto the podcast with me to discuss important topics that impact the horse community. So whether you are a crazy horse lady like me, want to learn more about horses, or want to learn more about the industry, you've come to the right place. On this podcast, we will be talking about ownership, horsemanship, fitness, faith, breeds, and so much more. We believe that it doesn't matter what type of saddle you ride in or the breed of horse you may ride. We all contribute to this community to make it great, and that there is always something to learn from the back of your horse. So grab a coffee and get ready to take some notes, and let's get started. This is the Educated Cowgirl podcast. All right, so hey Madison, and welcome to the Educated Cowgirl podcast. I am so excited to have you here and talk with you, and thank you again for agreeing to come on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So to kick us off, would you please introduce yourself to the listeners, what you do, how you're involved in the equine industry, and a fun fact about yourself?
Definitely. So I'm Madison Nirenstein. I've been involved in the equestrian world for over 20 years, which sounds weird to say, about 12 of which was with AQHA. Currently live in San Francisco and run a digital marketing company. And prior to bringing my horse home and transitioning kind of out of the AQHA competitive space, I rode with High Point Performance horses in English and Western all-around events in Texas, and have more recently been focused on DIY with my Western mare and started dabbling a bit in the hunter jumper world.
Yeah.
And then, let's see, fun fact. I did competitive drag racing in high school, and I was one of, I want to say, 3 girls in the entire division, and I won the year-end award, which comprised of winning the most racing days throughout the year. So that was pretty exciting. So
that is awesome. That is like so awesome. I love that. With like showing in the all around and the AQHA circuit, I would love to hear more about your background and your story, like how you got started with riding and showing, and all that.
Yeah. So when I was younger, about 6, my grandparents actually recommended horse camp to my parents as a way to keep me out of trouble as a 6-year-old. No, but basically to find something that I might be interested in. And so I started with a riding camp in Novato, California, Flying M Ranch. It still exists today, and they're very focused on, teaching the basics. I probably cleaned about 10 stalls every single day. So we learned everything. We were judged on brushing. I learned so many different disciplines, both English and Western, all sorts of different things. It was a lot of fun. And so from there, I started to want to compete. So I competed at very local shows and then sort of just continued to kind of level up from there. I changed to a few different trainers in California, kept kind of wanting to win more higher level shows. And then I transitioned to new trainers and went onwards from there. So that's kind of where I've gotten to where I'm at now, is basically just goals evolving and wanting to, compete at the world championships and then wanting to be top 10 and then wanting to win and finding different trainers that enabled me to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so good. I think a lot of people can probably relate to starting similarly with horse camps, and then their obsession evolved from there. Um,
My parents didn't know what they were getting themselves into.
right, right. So when you started making your videos, what was your plan or goal, I guess, behind it?
Oh my
Or
gosh.
did you have one?
No plan, no goal. So I was riding my horse out at a barn that I'd originally moved her to when I brought her home. We've moved since then, but I moved with my friend Gina, who I've been riding with since that camp. And we've been in the AQHA circuit with different trainers after that. And one day she just said, I've been getting a lot of horse TikTok videos. You should do a TikTok. And I was like, I don't know. And I've dabbled in TikTok. I had a fashion TikTok. I still do. I barely use it. I just don't have time anymore because of the
Yeah.
horse TikTok. But she was like, you should do it. You should do it. And I was like, why don't you do it? She's like, no, you should do it. And I was like, okay, fine. I'll start filming some videos for fun. And so I filmed like my horse running around. And then I filmed one video where I had a cookie and I like put it down and my horse is eating it out of my pocket. And all of a sudden it got 1.2 million views. And I was like, okay, do this. And so then of course from there everything just went down in terms of views, but it was kind of like a kick I needed to be like, okay, fine, I'll start doing it. And so Gina actually had a lot of the original ideas for the videos and they've evolved since then. But yeah, I mean, I had no goals to start. I just kind of was filming horse things because honestly, as a younger person, I feel like there's the horse girl concept where I don't know, it was always like awkward to talk about horses because people would make weird comments, oh, you're a horse girl, blah, blah, blah. And so I think I probably had that deeply ingrained in me somewhere of not really wanting to make horse content, which is so lame. You should be able to do whatever you want and be whoever you want. And so I think that was part of breaking out of my shell and being like, you know what? No, I think there's a lot of people who love horses, care about content about horses, and so do I, and it's fine to be me. So it's been really fun.
Yeah, no, that's so great. And I've told you this, your videos really have like opened up a new community of like bringing up a lot of important conversations and breaking down the costs of showing and being an amateur and the stereotypes that go along with it. Which not only helps others who show, but then it helps educate the general public about the show world and what it's actually like. What do you think has been the most rewarding part to you about sharing your horse journey with everyone? And then have you seen it impact others and their horses?
Yeah, definitely. Honestly, I did not expect to get the amount of engagement that I have, and it's really awesome. I would say probably the most rewarding part are some of the DMs that I've gotten from people either saying how much they relate to my content or they wished other people would have spoken up about certain topics, and it's nice to see someone doing that. I think also I've had a few people say that I've revived their love of horses, which is so nice, by discussing like not needing to show and loving horses and just enjoying horses on a day-to-day basis, which was a big learning curve for me, especially as someone who's been competing my entire life. And I'm a very competitive person, especially with myself. So that's honestly a lesson that I learned and really loved and enjoyed, was bringing my horse home and being like, wow, I don't need to show every single day or even at all to enjoy horses. And that was a big fear for me was, am I going to lose my identity if I stop showing because it was such a big part of my life? So I think being able to express that to others and then having other people say, that helped me along because I had the same fears. It's been really touching. Like, I didn't expect it to reach so many people. I was kind of just sharing my story and my experiences. And I've been careful, with I'm not trying to act like I'm this amazing DIY person by any means, but it's
Mm-hmm.
just been sharing my story and saying, here's my way stumbling through and the learnings that I've had. So I think that's definitely the most rewarding part and I do read almost all of the DMs. I try my very best and I try to respond to everyone and I try to respond to comments. It's getting harder as
Yeah.
it's growing, but I am trying, I promise.
Yeah. No, I love that so much. Like, really making it okay to, like, because I think a lot of times we can get caught up in the competitive side of, like, oh, I have to win this. I have to qualify for World Show. Like, I have to go to this many shows. And, like, it kind of sometimes we can get burnt out and we can stop enjoying our horses. So, taking that time to step back and be like, why did I originally start riding? Oh, because I love horses. Like, it's
Totally.
not, yeah. But yes, so good. So something else that I like the space that you've created is stepping out of your comfort zone and learning a new discipline in the hunter jumper space, which I think more people should learn something new and step
Yeah.
out of their cocoons. Um, can you take us through why you decided to go that route, and was it something that happened in your life? Were you just curious or you just wanted to branch out?
Yeah, so I have always, since I was younger, wanted to do like the big time jumping stuff, like Olympic level jumping, and knew that I was not going to be able to afford that. So it was something where I just kind of was like, oh, it's like a far off dream. I would love to do it, but the opportunity just didn't arise. And so when I was younger, maybe 10 or 11, I did a little bit of jumping. And then again, through college, I joined the team and I did that for about a year, but mostly just with kind of backyard horses or horses who didn't have very much jumping experience, which, I had a little bit of experience, but I wasn't a, practiced jumper by any means. So it was always like a little bit sketchy when
Yeah.
I was doing it. And so I needed a really solid horse to learn on. And I kind of knew that. And I had taken
Hmm.
some lessons around here and gotten tossed off some horses. And I'm too old for that.
Yeah.
If I hit the ground, it's going to cause some problems. And so
Yes.
I think one lesson I will say that I think a lot of people should take is it's okay to want to learn on a solid horse. It's okay to not want the horse that's going to toss you into the ground.
Hmm.
And I know that some people do learn that way and that is great. But I think building confidence is very important, especially in a sport where you can get really hurt.
Yes.
So I was always super interested in trying the jumping and just kept talking to people and some opportunities arose and I really couldn't turn the opportunity that I had down to be able to ride a really nice horse in a full-time training program and test out the waters. I was able to do a month-to-month lease, which is pretty rare at that level of the hunter jumper space. And so that's kind of how I transitioned into that because I was sort of seeking it out. I was seeking out different lessons and then talked to a few different people who said, oh, you should call this person. You should see if there's an opportunity here. And so that's kind of how that transpired. And I don't know, I'm super interested in trying every single discipline. I think that's something after going off on my own, bringing my horse home, that's become
Hmm.
clear to me. Like, I'm going to try some dressage lessons on her. And I passed a vaulting center the other day that I want to look into. I'm like, that looks so cool. And so I think learning new disciplines is one
Hmm.
of the best things you can do as an equestrian, honestly, and it really gives you an appreciation for all aspects of the sport.
Yes, and it builds community, and which is something, as I've told you, is something I'm trying to build more of with this podcast, is that bringing us back together, and like we're kind of get stuck in our own little worlds of rodeo or breed shows or whatever, and we kind of forget about everything else around us. But that's so good. And like going back to the safety and learning on a safe horse, like that can be so important because I've had falls where it's shaken my confidence a lot and where I'm just like, Okay, I gotta get back on. How am I gonna do this? But yeah, no, that's so important, and especially when you're just learning, you don't want that person to just be like, "Oh, you want to learn how to do this? All right, I'm just gonna throw you on this horse." And it's like, can you take a step back? But yeah,
Totally. And I tried a few different horses as I was starting the hunter jumper journey, and it was very clear which ones were going to be a good fit and which ones were going to be, okay, this horse is amazing, but I'm not there yet. And you could tell this horse is going to jump me out of the saddle. And so it's just, yeah, that's why it's important to find the right trainer as well
yeah.
to match you with the right
Hmm.
horse and make sure that you're safe, because there's danger in every single discipline. And so I think it's okay to take out that one level of, am I going to die today?
Yeah.
You don't need that.
Yes, exactly. And what has been your favorite part about it?
Ooh, I think this is sounds so minimal, but continuing to progress, I think, is the coolest thing. So when you get to a certain level in a certain discipline where you kind of feel like, okay, we're at the top. I feel like I'm a little tapped out. There's always something to learn. So I'm not saying in the Western world, oh my gosh, or the all around world, I'm like tapped out, there's nothing left. But it gets harder to continue to progress the higher you go up because
Hmm.
it's less to learn in many ways. Not to say that there's not little things you can learn, but when you're learning a new discipline, there is so much to learn and you progress so much faster. I think that's probably
Hmm.
the way to say it, is that maybe there's still as much more to learn, but your progression typically will be a lot slower because maybe they're more complex or they're more difficult things that you're learning versus starting with something newer. You just get to see the progress go so quickly. And so, my trainer would tell me, adjust this, and then I'd do it and my round would be better. And it was like, wow, like I was able to do that thing and look how much better we are. And yeah, I think that's a case across disciplines. And it's nice to have started working holes on the ground and then,
Right.
watch yourself jumping 3 feet now and looking back at the progress. So I think that's probably my favorite part.
Nice, nice. Love that. So what have been some of the similarities and differences you've found between the jumping world and all around? Um, and do you think there's anything the two worlds can learn from each other to better themselves and the industry?
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's a great question. Differences. Let's try to list them out. Um, I think all around is cheaper to do at the top levels versus the hunter jumper space. I would say, at least in my experience, and again, it really depends on your trainer. It really depends on the level you're doing. It really depends on the state you're in, blah, blah, blah. But in my experience, it seemed like the hunter jumper world was probably double the cost of the quarter horse world. And I'm not going to the Olympics, right? So
Right.
I can't even imagine. I've talked to some people who show at the I think it's WEF. Yeah, I don't know that much about the hunter jumper space, but
Hmm.
in Wellington, and talking about how there's some shows that they spend $100,000 on the show. And I just can't fathom that. So I think in terms of cost, you can be very successful in the quarter horse world with a lot less money, and it's still ridiculously expensive. So similarities, I would say everything in general is expensive. It's
Hmm.
all expensive, but it's how far does that money take you? And I think way further in the quarter horse space and
Hmm.
all around space. Horse shows are so different. The schedules are completely different. So at a hunter jumper show, that's all that's there. At an all-around show, you might have jumping, you'll have Western riding, you'll have showmanship,
Hmm.
you'll have halter. So there are tons of different events at that one show, which is kind of cool because then you get access to seeing different events. So you might go watch the ranch riding, even though you do the all around or the horsemanship or what have you. And so that's a cool way to be able to see, oh, maybe I would be interested in that. And I've watched the jumping at the AQHA World Show and have been like, oh, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's totally different versus at the jumping shows, it's hunters and jumpers, separate
Hmm.
disciplines, and that's kind of it. Their schedule is awesome. I think AQHA could learn a lot from their schedule. At the jumper shows, I only showed on kind of the weekend days. So I showed Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and the trainers showed I want to say for sure I think Wednesday, Thursday, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So they're showing midweek versus amateurs are showing at the weekend, which I think is a great layout. Again, I don't know necessarily how that would work for all around because there's so many more events. So it's much easier to say, like, hey, you should put everything on the weekend, but we'd probably finish at 10 p.m. But the layout was awesome because for someone like me who works a full-time job, I
Mm-hmm.
was able to go to the show and, put all my client meetings at the beginning of the week and not really miss that much. So that was
Mm-hmm.
huge. So that's another difference. And then I think a learning that maybe AQHA could try to take from the hunter jumper world. The
Mm-hmm.
hunter jumper space had better prizes. Honestly, probably more money that goes into it. So
Mm-hmm.
I, but that was pretty cool. And then I would say environment wise, a little bit hard to comment on because it wasn't like I could say, oh, I was hanging with all my friends and they're nicer here and they're cattier here or what have you, because I had no friends in the hunter jumper space. So
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of like going into a new discipline, no idea anyone around me. And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of on my own versus in the quarter horse world. I'll walk by the stalls and be like, oh, hey, how's it going? And you create this community,
Right,
which I'm
right.
sure is the case in the hunter jumper world, but I hadn't had the time to build that. So hard to comment on that. Another similarity, your presentation and your horse's presentation is important. So the way that you tuck your ears or your hair over your ears under your helmet, specifically for hunters, that's the tail, the braids, etc., how the horse looks, all important. Less so in jumpers, but obviously you want your horse to look clean. So
Right.
I think that's a big similarity. And then in terms of what they can take from one another, like I said, schedule for sure. The main thing I would say is to understand and learn different disciplines. And
Mm-hmm.
I think this is so important. I had a hunter jumper trainer tell me that he said, well, in the Western world, you just rip their faces off. And we just can't do that. We just can't do that in the hunter jumper space. And it's ignorant comments like that just totally divide the industries. Like
Yes.
you've never ridden a Western pleasure horse. You've never done the Western riding. You've never seen the top level Western trainers.
Mm-hmm.
How dare you, in my opinion?
Right.
I would never come into your industry and make a comment that ignorant. And so I unfortunately think usually people aren't so blunt about it, but I unfortunately think maybe on the internet that eh, we don't know enough about other industries necessarily to make comments, which I think is a bummer because we should be able to know about other
Yeah.
industries. And I think that's what I've loved about getting perspective of doing these shows and being kind of in the hunter jumper space for a brief period of time. I can't talk about it completely,
Mm-hmm.
but it does give me enough perspective to say, hey, this is what I've noticed over here. And something I've learned from the hunter jumper space is, wow, they warm up their horses so much more. And I walk my horse for 10 to 15 minutes before my lesson to make sure he's super warm. And so that's something personally that I'm going to take into my DIY Western world is before I ride, I'm going to make sure that I walk my horse for 10 minutes
Yeah.
because I just think that's fantastic. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
again, right, there's goods and bads of all industries. And so it would be awesome if everyone, you can't learn everything, right? But at least would start to have a conversation within different industries about what we can learn and the good and the bad so that we can all help. I think I've
Mm-hmm.
mentioned before, which is just, there's obviously, I had a video the other day on a horse abuse. There's tons of horse abuse across industries. And if we were able to, instead of just pointing fingers at all of the different industries, like, oh my gosh, what's happening in the racehorse industry? And what about the hunter jumpers and the Western
Mm-hmm.
we're doing there next? Be able to have a conversation with everyone about, okay, clearly there's a problem and it's across
Yes.
all industries. And so instead of pointing fingers, what can we do to actually address the problem? Because we all care and love for the horses. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so important. Like I think because I'm kind of the opposite of you is a lot of my show career I was showing AQHA, but I was showing hunter jumpers. And I only went Western for showmanship and halter. That's just because my horse was really good at it. And so I did have that preconception before I started really riding Western of like, oh, like I am going to be honest here. I have friends in barrel racing, but I had a preconception of barrel racing of, oh, they're just crazy. They don't care about their horses. They just run fast. But then like as I have friends in that world, I'm like, oh, they actually do have to. There's a lot of horsemanship that goes into. They have to rate their horses before they go around the barrel and all that stuff. So I think that's so important, like you said, to not point fingers, and because that doesn't make change happen, that just causes more problems. So that's so good. Um, so as we've discussed, you made the decision to leave your full time trainer and start to do a lot of things on your own, with the exception of lessons and that kind of stuff. Um, would you be able to dive just a little bit into that decision making process of what spurred you to really make that change with your showing and how you think it's impacted your life with horses?
Oh, huge question. So, oh wow, there were so many things that went into that. First and foremost, I would just say that the trainers that I was with, I wouldn't go to anyone else ever. In terms of the Western all around, they were so amazing. They revived my love of horses. I think I almost quit before I ended up in their barn because I was so burnt out and I was so honestly tired of the abuse, the trainer to client abuse, that I just felt like I was done. And then I joined their program and I joined their barn. And yeah, I think it's so important to find the right barn fit because it'll make or break. Like genuinely almost quit riding because of the situation that I had been in before. And so I'm so grateful for them. And I was with them for, I want to say 7 years, maybe 8, which was the best part of my entire equestrian career and when I was most successful, which makes sense because if you find the right environment, you find the right support system, and you find the right trainers, that tends to be what happens. And
Right.
so, yeah, it was a really hard decision. At the time, I had 3 horses. I had a horse named Peanut, KM Time Machine, a horse named Henry, How About a Dance, and my mare Danica, No Doubt I'm Trouble. And so Peanut was my up and coming Western all around horse. He was a baby. And so the decision to sell him was essentially my business was growing, actually. And it was very hard to balance horses and my business. And the more I worked, the less I could ride. But the more I
Mm-hmm.
worked, the more money I made. And I was paying for everything towards the end on my own. And so I decided to sell him because also learning an all around horse and learning a baby horse, and all my horses were in Texas and I was in California, is
Mm-hmm.
it takes a lot of work. It takes a ton of work to be able to get connected to a new horse. So decided to sell him. And then I knew that it was kind of the right time for me to transition out. I had reached all of my goals. The last goal that I had had was to win the Quarter Horse Congress. And then the year that I had sold my horses, I was able to win. And so that was sort of like the check mark that I felt like I needed. I wanted to win the AQHA World Championships, the NSBA World Championships, and the All American Quarter Horse Congress. And so once I did that, I just felt so satisfied and so complete. And I was like, I could come up with more goals, but I knew with where the trajectory of my business was going and honestly how expensive everything was,
Mm-hmm.
it just the teeter-totter started to move in the direction of, wow, this is a lot of money to be really stressed for not as much return because I really feel like I've hit all my goals. And so I think having to pay for everything myself, it gave me that perspective of, okay, when is this worth it? And
Mm-hmm.
how can I balance everything? And maybe it's better for me to take a step back so I can focus on building my business, be happy with where I ended kind of on a high, and then eventually be able to maybe come back later when I'm feeling a lot more confident and my business has grown and maybe I have more people working for me so that I'm not as slammed.
Right.
And so I had 2 horses then, Henry and Danica, and the decision really came down to, oh my gosh, there were so many things, honestly, but which horse, honestly, I could take home and know that they're going to go on the trails, they're going to be super well trained, they're going to be good around anyone,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of like a at home good horse. And Henry was younger and he had a lot more years left in him and he was an amazing hunter under saddle horse. And the decision, yeah, really came down to, does it make sense to bring him home? Does it make sense to retire him? I didn't have property, so it wasn't something where I could bring them both and just retire him to a grass field and then have her continue to do trail rides and things like that. So it was a really hard decision. I would say those two are my heart horses. Henry means the world to me. And so I have a laundry list of, okay, if I'm going to sell him, X, Y, and Z stipulation. And I ended up finding the absolute perfect home for them and said, he's not to be resold. You guys will retire him. If you don't want to retire him, I have first rights of refusal. I want him back because I love that horse so much.
Right.
So it came down to just finding the right fit and being okay with that. And then knowing Danica, I've had for longer than any other horse. And she means absolutely everything to me. She got me through a lot of hard times, which I think a lot of us can relate to. You have that one horse that just she just has a special place in my heart, and I knew I was never going to sell her, and ended up being the perfect horse for taking home, doing the trails, doing all sorts of things, because she's so calm typically. Not right now because she's not stall ready. She's trying to kill me every time I take her out of the stall. She reared the other day and I'm like, this is a new horse. I don't know what's happening. But typically very, very calm and just such a good demeanored horse. So that was a really long-winded answer, but really what it came down to in terms of transitioning out of the space was time, money, resources, and where I was at in my competitive career, and just feeling like kind of everything fell into place with, wow, this is really expensive, so I should probably not continue doing this at this point in my life, paying for everything on my own. And then it makes sense because of my business being busy that I should probably take the time to focus on that. I've met all my goals, and I can take this one horse home and still have horses in my life and potentially go back to competing eventually with her or with another horse and having that option. So I think I never wanted to sell all of them. Really didn't want to sell Henry.
Yeah.
But it ended up being the perfect solution, and I'm honestly glad that I did, because it worked out and it made and opened doors for me to be able to do the things I'm doing now. Because if I had both horses, I would still be paying those expenses, and so I probably wouldn't have been able to do the jumping because I would have had two horses on my bill. So it's decisions like that that we have to make as adults.
Yeah, one of those adulting decisions, especially as an adult equestrian or adult amateurs, definitely have to figure out where are our priorities, what's important to us, what's going to make us happiest. It can be really hard to say goodbye to horses that we know we see a lot of potential in, and we want to be those people to take them to those world championships or have those special moments with, where we're like, I can't do it right now. I know he's going to be in the right home with like whatever they do with him, but and I think it's also important to have these conversations and talk about this, because there's probably a lot of other people in the same situation that they're like, I don't want to say goodbye to this horse. I don't want to say goodbye to these people, but you have to do what's right for you. Like, especially when you're talking about there was toxic situations and it wasn't really good for you that way. Like, you have to kind of say no to some things to say yes to other things. So that's really important.
Yeah, I think that for me, especially with Peanut, he was young. He had one world championship under his belt, but I felt like, oh my gosh, like we could do so much. We could do the equitation, we could win this, we can win that. So that was a hard decision, because like you said, it's difficult when you have a horse that you haven't, made that final win on or what have you. I think with Henry, it was so different because we had won everything that I honestly possibly could have won on him. And so in many ways, it felt like the right time to sell him. And I had this conversation with my trainer, which is, I mean, I'll just be honest, in many ways, it was only downhill from there. And we had that brutally honest conversation, which was, you have had so many wins on him, not to say that you wouldn't continue, but like, do you want to go out on top, or do you want to then come back the next year and be seventh? And so these are conversations with trainers that, why I'm so grateful to have had the trainers that I had during all of these decision-making processes, which is, okay, well, let's just talk about what options you have and what you feel would be the best decision for each horse. And there's plenty of things that I wish, I felt like with Western riding, Danica and I were just clicking. We were third in the level 1 when they had it at the World Show against some serious nice Western riders. And so I was excited for the next year because I felt like we were really clicking, and I had wanted to go get some titles on her, but realized that at the end of the day, again, I had hit all the goals that I had wanted to as an equestrian myself. And it's not to say that maybe one day I will go back with her, maybe it'll be another horse. There's always another option, another door that's going to open.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So another topic I wanted to bring up, and as I've told you, one of the reasons I started this podcast is to educate others in the public about the industry. And I think your red flag videos that you've posted a few weeks ago are starting to approach this subject in a lot of ways. And it brings up a lot of really important topics that people may be oblivious to, or they just think like they'll get solved by someone else. But what is a topic that you've seen recently in the show world or in the past few years that you're passionate about or have noticed that you think people aren't talking about or may not know much about?
Yeah, I would say my two biggest personally would be abuse, both trainer to client abuse and horse abuse, which obviously we touched on both a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I wish I knew going into the horse world was there are a lot of trainers. Gosh, this is going to sound terrible. Let me preface this. Like I said, have had so many fabulous, fabulous trainers. And there are so many amazing trainers out there. And as clients, we need to make sure to recognize that and be good clients and be kind clients and understand that those good trainers have put their heart and soul into us winning, taking care of our horses. And I am so grateful for the amazing trainers that I've had. There's my
Mm-hmm.
preface. That being said, something I wish I knew going into the horse world was that there are
Mm-hmm.
a lot of trainers with a lot of nerve. And the amount of disrespect that I have faced throughout my time in the quarter horse world in my earlier years was pretty mind-blowing. I try to think of other industries where people could talk to you the way that they talk to you in the horse world and not get some form of reprimanding. It's pretty disturbing. And I think especially when you're new and learning the ropes, there are trainers that take advantage of that and get you to spend money that maybe you shouldn't. And I'm not saying all trainers because like I mentioned, there's absolutely amazing trainers, but uh,
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest piece of advice I have is if it feels wrong, it probably is. If you're being yelled at, belittled, told you know nothing, you're in the
Mm-hmm.
wrong environment. You should not feel like you can't ask a question. You should not feel like you're uncomfortable in the environment you're in. You shouldn't feel like you're being talked about behind your back. These are things that I wish I knew, like I said, going
Mm-hmm.
into it. And that's why I've been talking about it in my videos because it's so, so important, especially with the amount of money we spend, to be in an environment where you feel like you're heard and you're respected and your horse is taken care of
Mm-hmm.
and they're out there, obviously. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be my comment is just, we're paying too much to be treated poorly.
Mm-hmm.
So long as, like I said, you're a good client
Mm-hmm.
and you're not being horrible to your trainers
Yeah.
and you're a good person and you just want to do what's right. Um, yeah, that's a big one for me. And I think in regards to horse abuse, having my horses at home and working one-on-one with the vet, with the dentist, with the chiropractor, and everyone involved in my horse's health
Mm-hmm.
has been so helpful because I've been able to kind of keep tabs on this is everything that's going on and also learn everything that's happening. And so knowing exactly what injections your horse is getting or knowing what medications they're on or, do they have any injuries? Are they sustainable? And I think across all disciplines, a lot of things happen behind closed doors that even the owners of the horses don't
Right.
know. So I
Yeah.
think having background knowledge in veterinary care, in dental. I'm not saying you need to be an expert, right? But
Right.
if you can be involved, and a lot of top level show barns, you're not involved.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's other ways to learn as well. Like my horses were in full-time care in the quarter horse world as well as recent hunter jumper space.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other ways to learn and be involved, but I would say don't be afraid to ask questions and maybe ask if you can go to your horse's, you know, when the vet comes out
Mm-hmm.
and ask
Mm-hmm.
questions and maybe you're far away and you can't do that. But I think that's really helpful to
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah, yeah, understanding like where your limits are, where your boundaries are, and like there is a point like you can have constructive criticism and your trainer can correct you, but when it crosses that line, and I know USCF is going through this right now with a recent trainer video they released.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's very important for a trainer to know like when it's gone too far, when they need to step back a minute and be like, okay, are you not understanding this? Like talk to that person, talk to your client, and um, which it's not to say, like you said, respecting to go both ways, but like you need to not take advantage of people. Like I've known some owners who they did come from money and they did have some trainers take advantage of that. And
Yep.
so when they were moving places, they were like looking for a barn that wouldn't take advantage of them, that cared more about the horse than how much money that this person was bringing in, or if they had 5 horses in training with them or whatever it may be. But yeah, no, that's so important, and it's so important to bring up. Okay, so for one final question, this has been so great, but I know you have a lot going on. So if you could give one final nugget or nuggets of advice to those listening who may be thinking about starting their show career or getting back into it, but they feel intimidated and overwhelmed, maybe not know where to start, what would you say to them?
So if someone wants to join the show world,
Either like they're just getting started or they want
okay.
to get back into it or something like that. And they feel just like see everyone else and they're like, I'm never going to be at that level.
Ah, oh my gosh. Well, we get that at every single level, don't we?
Yes,
I
yes.
would say, honestly, first and foremost, don't care what anyone thinks about your journey. I had a lot of stress and anxiety actually when I was leaving the quarter horse world because I kept thinking, what if everyone's judging me for selling this incredible horse? Or what if people think X, Y, and Z? It
Mm-hmm.
really doesn't matter. I did what was going to ultimately be right for my horses and my journey, and that's really all that should matter. And so I think with someone who's starting or trying to figure things out or is worried about, I'll never be X, Y, and Z, I would just say, first of all, try not to let that get to you. I would say, similar to social media, it's not always as good as it seems. Not to say that, if someone's winning, someone's winning. However, I, you don't know what's happening behind closed doors. You don't know what's going on in their journey. You don't know what other
Mm-hmm.
things are happening. And so I think focusing on your own journey and your own progression and finding goals for yourself where you feel like you're satisfied is so, so important. I think it is hard to find, to like get started if you are trying to get started in the showing world, like finding that right trainer or doing, taking the next step. Ask a lot of questions, talk to a lot of people. The opportunities that I've found have legitimately come from I talked to my vet. My vet talked to
Mm-hmm.
the trainer that she had trained with. I called that trainer. He said, I have X horse available or similar in the quarter horse world, doing something similar, talking to even just someone like me or someone who's been in the quarter horse world or someone who's been in the hunter jumper space. I've had a ton of people reach out on TikTok that have said, hey, if you want to do this training program, I know X, Y, and Z in name the area.
Yeah.
And I'm, oh my gosh, wow, I didn't know about that. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, trying to focus on your own journey, not being super worried about what everyone else is doing or what everyone else thinks, and being creative. Because there's a lot of times, even for me, where I've felt, oh my gosh, I can't financially compete. And I think that's true for a lot of people who feel like, wow, I can't get to that level because I don't have the money to do that. And so I think there's a lot of ways that we can get scrappy and a lot of people you
Mm-hmm.
can talk to about opportunities potentially to lease a horse, or maybe they need someone to ride the horse a couple times a week. There's random things that you can fall into that can kind of help you along your journey, working with certain trainers, being willing to
Mm-hmm.
put in the time and say, maybe I'll do it for free because I get to ride this really nice horse, what have
Mm-hmm.
you. But I would say just be open and try not to put blinders on because I've been there where it's like this is the only path to X, Y, and Z. And I think getting out of the quarter horse world actually and taking my horse home has opened my mind so much to the fact that it's not linear, it's not A, B, and C. You could go any path. There are so many paths to get you to where you want to go. And so
Yeah,
to just be open to that and know that there are doors that'll open.
for sure. Oh my gosh. All of that was like so good and like the perfect answer. Um, so
I try.
yes. So what can we look forward to seeing from you next? I know you've talked about it a little bit on your social media, but and then any exciting things in the works for you?
Ooh, always exciting things. I'm
Yeah.
always opening doors. Yeah, so recently I found a trainer. So the barn that I'm at does not have full-time training. I just have my horse at a beautiful boarding barn that I'm so lucky to have found. And there are a few trainers that kind of work out of there one-on-one with clients. And so I talked to this one trainer and I said, hey, I'm ending my lease on my hunter jumper. She so happened to have been a very competitive hunter jumper when she was younger, worked with
Mm-hmm.
John French, who many people will be familiar with as a massive trainer in the hunter world, and a few other Olympians that she had the privilege of working with one-on-one. And so I just asked her, and this is why I say be open to possibilities, talk to people and ask questions, because I
Yes.
said, this is a long shot, but is there any chance where I could ride some really nice horses and continue to take hunter jumper lessons, but not have to show, not have
Mm-hmm.
to do the lease, not have to pay $50,000 for the lease plus however much more money to be able to show, which I'm not really interested in doing. And she said, yes, I happen to know someone. And so that transitioned into me going out to watching her ride a client's horse who no longer shows him. He's 16, he's imported from New Zealand, super cool horse. And she said, let me check in with the owners and see if it's okay if you take some lessons on him. And they said
Mm-hmm.
yes. And so that is my next step in my hunter jumper journey. Because again, and I've mentioned this in a lot of my videos, I just love learning and I've really loved being in that environment and getting to progress. And so that's my next step there. And then I'm actually flying out to Florida to take some lessons with Lainey, who I know you had on your podcast earlier.
Yes, yes, she's
She's
amazing.
an amazing trainer in the quarter horse world, and she has been so integral to helping me in this journey and being just awesome. Just another example of an amazing trainer. And so I'm super excited. I'm gonna fly out and hopefully take some videos of WEC because I know everyone wants to see WEC
Yeah.
and take some lessons on her sweet horse. And yeah, just take the opportunities that I can as they come to just continue to learn and grow. And I will film as much as I can.
Nice, nice. So good. So exciting. So I love to end my interviews with a this or that game. I'll give you two different options and you can tell me which one you prefer. So mornings or evenings?
Oh, I'm an evening gal through and through. I can't do mornings. I just can't wake up.
Nice. Nice. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Nice, nice. This is pertains to showing. Western riding or working hunter?
I've never done the working hunter, so I
Hmm.
feel like I have to choose Western riding, but yeah, that's a tough one. I'm gonna have to pick Western riding just because I've not done the working hunter.
Nice, nice. So I think I might know the answer to this one, but mares or geldings?
Honestly, if you know the answer, I think that's pretty impressive because I'm not sure I know the answer. So
I
this
could
one,
be wrong.
okay, I'm gonna say I'm a gelding gal, but Danica, my mare, is probably not the only mare, but she has the little special place in the mare world for her.
Yes.
I am primarily a gelding gal.
Nice, nice. All right.
Was that yes?
I mean, I figured you'd say mare just because of Danica,
Yeah,
but you never know. You could have, yeah. Okay. Cozy night at home or a fun night out?
Oh, cozy night at home, all
Nice,
all the way.
nice. And because you are a San Francisco gal, mountains or beach?
Oh man. Can I pick both? Mountains or
If you
beach?
want.
Well, it's this or that, so I have to pick. Is the beach in San Francisco? Because if that's the
I mean,
case,
probably on the Bay Area, I think. I don't know.
then definitely mountains because it's way too cold out here for the beach. But maybe if it's like San Diego Beach, I'm getting way too into this. I'm like, I need to know this exactly. Where is the beach and what are the mountains? Because I also snowboarding, so mountains are cool. You know what? I'm gonna go with mountains just because there's a lot of outdoor activities that I like.
Nice. Awesome. All right. This has been so much fun, Madison. Thank you again for agreeing to come on today. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yes. I love talking to people like you who are doing good things and big things for the industry and really bringing up a lot of important topics that impact the horse community. For those who don't know, where can they follow along with your journey?
So I have a TikTok channel, which we've talked a bit about, which is Madison TN Equine. And I believe that's my Instagram as well. So those are my main social platforms. And then I have a bunch of personal platforms, which you can find if you want. But those are the horse related platforms. I've been way more active on TikTok. I try to post almost every single day. It's been a lot. I have to set aside time after work to do it, but I just love it so much that I've been doing it. But I'm sure everyone's like, how does she have the time to do that? I don't, but I make time.
Yeah, you make time.
And I've been a little bit less active on Instagram, but I'm trying. So those are the two platforms.
Great. Awesome. So good. I hope we get to connect again in the future. Wish you the best of luck with your showing, with Danica's rehab journey and your jumping and all that.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was a blast.
Didn't you just love Madison's story from drag racing to the quarter horse world and her journey in the jumping pen? We discussed there is always so much to learn in the world of horses, and that is what can make the industry so exciting for new riders as well as very experienced professionals. And it's okay to want to do things the way that is right for you, and don't compare your journey to someone else's. We each have our own needs and goals when it comes to our horses. As with every episode, I will put all of Madison's information in the show notes if you would like to follow along with her journey with her horses and jumping. As always, if you love this episode, please make sure to let me know on social media by taking a screenshot and tagging me in your stories at The Educated Cowgirl, and make sure to follow along on my social platforms as well as on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to this podcast, so you are notified when I release new episodes. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Educated Cowgirl podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, learned something new, and will come back for more. But for now, stay blessed and ride on, cowgirls.